Good morning, boys and girls, mommies and daddies, grandmommies and grandpuppies. Today's story is about old Mrs. Thomas. Now, that's not very flattering, but that's how the lady was referred to. This lady was new in town, and she just bought this old house that everybody said was haunted. And the three little pigs were very afraid to even walk by it. All the boys and girls were, because they just didn't know. And they had heard that somebody actually bought the house and was living in that house. Oh boy, they were scared. They didn't know what to do. Well, Mrs. Thomas was a very sweet little old lady. She was about 87. That's about what Mr. Farmer Brown kind of figured that she was. And she called the three little pigs lawn service and said, "Three little pigs, would you please mow my yard? My yard is terrible, and the flowers are overgrown, and oh my gracious, the weeds. Can you please come and help me?" Well, they were scared to death. They just didn't know if they wanted to come help her or not. And Mommy Piggy says, "Now, boys, this is a little old lady who needs your help. You just be strong and brave, and there's nothing to worry about. I've already talked to her, and she's a very nice lady, so you go and you help her now." So they gathered their lawnmower, and they even got to take the riding lawnmower because Mommy Pig knew that the weeds were real high, and they would need her riding lawnmower. So they took the riding lawnmower, they took the push mower, they took the rake and the hoe and the hedge clippers. Oh my gracious sakes, they had to pile everything in the wagon. And they took a great big huge jug of water because they knew that they would need the water because the sun was so hot that day. Well, they got to Mrs. Thomas's house about 8 o'clock in the morning, so it wouldn't be too hot yet. And they were mowing her backyard. They had gotten the front yard done, and Squiggly was on the riding lawnmower in the backyard, and Piggly had done the push mower in the front yard, and Wiggly had trimmed all the weeds. He pulled all the weeds and he trimmed the hedges, the flowers in the front of the house after he weeded them. Oh, they looked so pretty, and it was like the flowers said, "Thank you, Wiggly, for getting all the weeds out of our way." They were just so beautiful. So Squiggly in the backyard was on the riding lawnmower, and he was going up and down and up and down, and boy, he had to go twice up and then twice down again, 2 times each time, boom, 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 because the grass was so thick and so high. All of a sudden, he bumped into something, and it made a noise. And he thought, "What was that?" So he went around it, and he finished mowing that stretch, and he came back up again, and he stopped, and he got off the riding lawnmower, and he looked at it, and there was this little bump sticking up out of the ground. And he kind of hit on it with a stick, and he went dunk, 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 dunk. And he thought, "Well, what in the world is that?" So he called Piggly and Wiggly, and they were finished in the front yard. And by this time, Mrs. Thomas had made some lemonade, and she came out with some lemonade and some cookies. And she said, "You boys have done such a beautiful job. Let me take you on a break, and you can have lemonade and cookies." Oh, right away they knew Mrs. Thomas was not a scary person and that she would be a good neighbor for the town. Well, Squiggly said, "Mrs. Thomas, come over here and look at this, what I found. I found something that's sticking up out of the ground, and you thump on it, and it goes thunk, 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 thunk." And she goes, "Huh, I wonder what that is." So Mrs. Thomas might have been 87, but she was pretty smart. She says, let me see your hoe for a minute. And so she took the hoe and she clanged it against the little hump in the ground, and it went clang, clang, clang. And she said, well, that's some sort of a metal. I don't know what it is. It could be steel or iron or aluminum or I don't know too many metals. But anyway, sounds like a metal. And so Squiggly says, well, I'll just hook a rope around the top of it and hook it onto my lawnmower, and we'll just pull it out of the ground and see what it is. And she says, well, that's a good idea, Mr. Squiggly. You just try that. So Squiggly got the rope and he ties it around this little knobber thing, and he puts it up to the lawnmower, and he gets on the lawnmower and he goes, vroom, vroom, and nothing happened. And he goes, vroom, 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 and nothing happened again. And he did it a third time. Whatever that was, sticking up out of the ground, wasn't going to move. And Mrs. Thomas says, wow, I wonder what that is. So Piggly says, do you want me to go and get Mr. Farmer Brown, Squiggly? And Squiggly says, I think Mr. Farmer Brown better come over here and look at this. So Piggly runs down the road and he goes into Mr. Farmer Brown. Mr. Farmer Brown, Mr. Farmer Brown, you never know what's going to happen. Mr. Farmer Brown, Mr. Farmer Brown. Mr. Farmer Brown says, slow down, Piggly, what's wrong? Well, you know that old Mrs. Thomas that moved into that haunted house down the road in town? And Mr. Farmer Brown says, yes, I've met her. She's a very nice lady. Well, yes, she is, because she gave us lemonade and cookies. But, he says, Piggly, slow down, what's wrong? Well, Squiggly was back in the backyard trying to mow all those weeds and all that, and he ran up on something, and we don't know what it is, and it's sticking out of the ground about that big, and we just don't know what it is. Can you come and help us? Well, Mr. Farmer Brown kind of knew, well, he didn't kind of know, he knew how bad that backyard was, and he knew how big it was. And he says, Piggly, let's take the small tractor, and I'll help you boys with that backyard, because it's pretty deep for even your mama's riding a lawnmower, and we don't want to break your mama's riding a lawnmower. So let's take the little tractor, and we'll go back to Mrs. Thomas's house, and we'll see what's wrong. Piggly says, oh, I get the road, ride. Oh, he was so happy. Oh, my gracious sakes. Wow, GrandMommy gets so excited that the camera falls. Anyway, he was so excited that he got to ride on Mr. Brown's little tractor, because that was the tractor that Mr. Farmer Brown let the pigs drive, was that little tractor. Now, that little tractor isn't little. It's a lot bigger than the riding lawnmower. Well, they got to Mrs. Thomas's house, and they went into the backyard, and Farmer Brown got off the tractor, and Piggly got off the tractor, and Mr. Farmer Brown went over, and he looked at it, and he goes, I wonder what this could be. Well, boys, let's see what we can do. So he took the rope that Squiggly had put around it, and he says, Squiggly, you did a good knot. That's a good tight knot. So I'm going to put it up to my tractor, and we're going to see if we can't pull it out. So with that, Mr. Farmer Brown went over to the tractor and tied the rope on, and he gets on the tractor, and he goes, rum, 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 and it moved. And it started coming out of the ground, and it made a big hole in the ground, because you know what it was? Boys and girls, it was an old-fashioned bell. It could either be a bell from a church or a bell from a school. Didn't know what exactly it was. And Mrs. Thomas was just, her mouth was just, she was just so surprised. Mr. Farmer Brown was a little bit surprised too, because he thought, wow, I wonder where this came from. So he got a hose, and he hosed off all the dirt off of it, and guess what it said on the side of the bell? It said, Little Red Schoolhouse And the date was 1878, the little red schoolhouse. Oh my goodness gracious. This was over 100 years old. Oh my, oh my, oh my, oh my. And they dug in the hole a little bit more, and they found old school desks, and they found erasers, and they found chalk. They found all sorts of things from a schoolhouse. So Mr. Farmer Brown says, well, I'm going to go to the city hall, and I'll look up the records for you, Mrs. Thomas. So he goes down to the city hall, and he asks for the records of 1878. And he starts reading all the records, and do you know what he found? The house that Mrs. Thomas bought to live in was originally the schoolhouse. How about that? It was the schoolhouse long, 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 long time ago. It seemed to be, according to the records, it seemed to be that when they stopped using the schoolhouse in 1937, they took the bell down from the schoolhouse, because that's what used to call the boys and girls to school. The teacher would go up and she'd ring, dong, ding, dong, the bell. And they knew it's time to go to school. Well, they took the bell, and they took the desk, and they took the chalk and the blackboards and the erasers, I think even the books, and they threw them in this big hole. Now, that was a silly thing to do, but that's what they did. Well, Mrs. Thomas was so surprised, and she said, Mr. Farmer Brown, there's a room in here that I don't understand the walls. I wanted to hang up some pictures on the wall, but the hammer wouldn't go through. Can you look at the wall and see what's behind the wall? And you know what they found? They found some more chalkboards, and there was writing on the chalkboards. Oh my goodness gracious, that many, 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 many years ago, and the blackboard was still there with writing on it. And it was ABCs, because it was the first grade. Piggly, Wiggly, and Squiggly says, the first grade, that's what we just did this week. We're in first grade too. Oh my goodness gracious, this is fun. Well, the mayor was so excited over the fact that Piggly, Wiggly, and Squiggly had found the bell to the very first schoolhouse that the little town had, that he declared that every August 27th, every year from now on, it would be the Piggly, Wiggly, and Squiggly Day. Okay, boys and girls, bye-bye for this time. See you Wednesday.